All right, so Unit 2 again. We're moving on to Topic 2. I know for essential question number 1, I had completely forgot to post the notes pages. I promise they should be posted now. So if you did not take notes for essential question 1, you're going to need to go back and do that. But if you did and you just typed it on a random piece of paper, you wrote it down, you can add it to these notes pages. So, essential question number 2 is what factors affect the historical migration patterns to and within North America? So, for essential question 1, we talked about the geographic advantages of North America, and that is partly why people settled here in the first place and how North America and its countries were able to develop into powerful countries. But the reasons people have migrated here and still migrate here have to do with three different factors that we're going to talk about. But first, let's talk about what migration is. So there are two types of migration. There's immigration with an E and immigration with an I. Immigration with an E is when you leave a location. Immigration with an I is when you come to a location. So if I left the United States and moved to Germany, I would be an E immigrant for the United States. I would be an I immigrant to Germany. They're spelled differently, but they're said the same way. So when we talk about it, we'll either talk about immigration with an E or immigration with an I. So those are the two types of migration. You're either leaving somewhere or you're going somewhere. Net migration is how countries kind of measure how their population is being affected by migration. So net migration is the difference between the number of immigrants with an I and the number of immigrants with an E. So this is how countries see if they have more people coming in or if they have more people going out. Net in-migration is the number of I immigrants, or is when the number of I immigrants exceeds the number of E immigrants. So that means that they have more people coming into their country and wanting to live there than they have wanting to leave and go to another country. Net out migration is when the number of E immigrants exceeds the number of I immigrants. So if a country has a negative net out migration, then that means that more people are leaving their country than wanting to come to their country, and that's whenever you see problems. Overall, the United States has a very positive net in migration. There are a lot more people coming in than that are wanting to leave. And so let's look at why people want to leave other countries and come to North America, specifically the United States and Canada is where you're going to see most of the migrants. So the three factors that influence migration are going to be social factors, political factors, and economic factors. These are the three factors that are going to drive migration either from a place or to a place. So let's look at the socio-political factors. I put these together because they are very related. So socio-political just means social and political. It's a fancy way of saying that. So one socio-political factor that influences migration is ethnic, religious, racial, and cultural persecution. Those cause people to leave countries and go somewhere else. So specifically in North America, and really, especially in the United States, religious freedom is a big idea. And that's kind of where we get our first wave of immigrants. The Pilgrims and the Puritans in the 1600s came for religious freedom. And then in the 1900s, a lot of Jews fleeing religious persecution in Europe came to North America. But also, another socio-political factor that influences migration is war, conflict, and famine. Those cause people to leave countries and go somewhere else where there's less conflict and more peace, more resources. In the 1800s, we get an influx of Irish immigrants. millions of Irish immigrants come to North America because of the potato famine that they were experiencing. In the 1950s until present day, actually, we get Central American migrants seeking asylum from civil wars, political conflicts, gang and drug related violence, especially from Mexico. You're probably familiar with um, the Mexican immigration coming across the border because they're seeking asylum from such harsh conditions, and specifically gang and drug related violence over there. It can get pretty bad. And then in the 2000s until now, we have a lot of asylum seekers from the Middle East trying to escape civil war, especially from Syria. The Middle East is a region that we'll learn about that is very um, there's always conflict, there's always unrest, there's not a whole lot of peace in the Middle East. Although there was just a peace deal signed between two countries, which was a big deal. But still, there are a lot of countries in the Middle East who don't have as many, don't allow their citizens as many rights, and they take away a lot of rights. And so those people are still coming into America. So these are large influx of migrants that came to the United States for socio-political reasons. You need to be familiar with those chunks for your test. And then mostly people migrated to North America for economic reasons. We always hear the American dream. That's why people come over here. And when studying migration, you will see that that's a big factor, wanting to make money. So to North America, reasons, how people migrate to North America from other countries. Here are some big influxes of immigrants that we're going to talk about. So between the 16 and 1800s, there was forced migration from West Africa so that they could be slaves. That was an economic move. People brought in slaves to grow the economy. That's what they did. As horrible as it's an economic factor, and that's a reason that we have millions of African Americans in the country is because they were forced to migrate over here. So that did increase population. In the 1800s, we have an influx of Germans that came to buy cheap farmland. That's mainly due to the Homestead Act of 1862. So during this time, especially in America, we had this idea of westward expansion, that we were supposed to go from sea to shining sea, and you'll learn more about that in American history. But our government really wanted people to settle the West because it's harder to take land away from a country that has people settled on it. And so they granted families 160 acres of free land if they would just live on it for at least 5 years. And so a lot of Germans actually came over, sought citizenship so that they could have that cheap farmland. Also in the 1800s, we have a rush of Asian immigrants to California because of the California gold rush. And then in the early 1900s, America starts urbanizing and industrializing. So we become, less agrarian, more industrial. We're not just farming stuff anymore. We've got factories. We have new inventions. The railroad comes into effect. The early 1900s is the Industrial Revolution. And so that causes the urbanization of America, and it attracted immigrants from Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe because of such economic opportunity and a lot of jobs. So those are some economic reasons why people migrate to North America. Now, within North America, people move all the time. We just change scales a little bit, right? Like, we're not just talking about worldwide. I'm sure some of you have moved during your lifetime. So a few most of the time when people move within North America, it's for economic reasons, mainly jobs or economic opportunities. And so some large economic migrations we see within North America happened. I don't know why we can't see this very well. Let me see if I can do this. Maybe that'll help. Not really. Can I move this? There we go. I'll just hide that. Okay. Um, so a few large migrations within North America. In the 1800s, again, because of manifest destiny and westward expansion and the Homestead Act, we have lots of people moving from the east to the west. That is how the West begins to be settled. We talked a little bit a couple of weeks ago about how initially, people settled in the United States on the East Coast because that's just where they came from. Well, because the United States then starts acquiring so much more land, people start migrating west. Also, people start moving to California, trying to get rich off gold, the gold rush in the 1800s as well. And then specifically today, we see rural to urban migration for greater economic opportunity. So a lot today we see migration of people moving from rural areas to urban areas, to cities. And so those are let me see if I can, yeah, let me go back here. Ah, those are some of the factors that affected historical migration patterns. So what you need to do is at the bottom of your notes page, go ahead and write that summary and answer the question, what factors affect the historical migration patterns to and within North America? Let me know if you have any questions. If not, that is it. Now I just have to figure out how to pause this.